Okay, so chapter 53, I'm not going to cover in a lot of depth in this recording because it's not super specific to the fulfillment of the covenant at the end of the age, but it is part of the continuing conversation. It's a seamless continuation of the conversation that began in 52, verse 13. And the context that we're looking at there does have to do with the end of the age. So this section of 52, verse 13, especially through 53, verses 1 through 3, especially, all are usually treated by commentators and scholars as one continuous section with an unnecessary chapter break. There seem to be two major points that Isaiah is trying to emphasize that I think are relevant to our conversation about the Great Commission and the fulfillment of the covenants at the end of the age, God's redemptive plan, the overarching narrative. And so the first major point has to do with the dichotomy of the Messiah's first and second coming, which again, we could look back at all the way back in chapter 49, the Messiah's consistent obedience and cooperation with heaven at his first coming were this appropriate approach to achieve the exaltation at his second coming. So there's these two appearings of the Messiah. In one of them, he is humble and obedient, and he's rejected. And at the second coming, he's secured his exaltation through the actions of his first coming. And at his second coming, of course, he defeats all his adversaries, but among all those who remain, he is accepted and he's exalted. But what's so cool is that Isaiah's talked about the arm of the Lord being demonstrated in the miraculous deliverance and restoration of Israel at his second appearing. But look at his first appearing. He says, so who has believed what he's heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? What's amazing is the Messiah's first appearing is just as much an expression of the arm of the Lord as his second appearing. It's part of the same redemptive narrative all the way through the covenants, all the way to the book of Revelation. The arm of the Lord is demonstrated in both appearings. And the Messiah's humility, his perfect obedience and cooperation with heaven is what attracts heaven's ultimate approval in both appearings. But humanity completely failed to recognize the Messiah's humble approach in his first appearing as he faithfully demonstrates the perfect leadership that's needed, the perfect surrender and obedience to the Lord's ultimate leadership that's needed to accomplish the final covenant fulfillment that happens at his second appearing. He is consistent, and these appearings are linked. The second major point that Isaiah seems to be making here in 53 especially is that he wants Israel to understand the relatable parallels of their Messiah's journey and Israel's journey. Just as Israel faces extraordinary anguish before being restored as God's agent of the redemption of the world, their Messiah also undergoes a similar experience. But the key difference is the Messiah did nothing to deserve God's discipline. That is a big difference, and we've got to mention that. But again, the Messiah bears the penalty of their iniquity. He endures the hardship, and coming out of that discipline, he's found faithful and is able to secure Israel's deliverance as well. And that's really what's going on in the remainder of this chapter. But there's a parallel experience because, again, Israel is God's chosen agent. Israel is God's servant nation for the redemption of the world. But they've got to go through discipline and deliverance and restoration. And the Messiah goes through the same thing. His appearance was marred beyond human resemblance, just as Israel's resemblance is going to be marred during the tribulation. This is a Messiah that they can relate to. Again, the difference being that Israel rebelled against God and the Messiah did not. But the Messiah shares in their sorrows all the same. Even more than that, he was pierced for their transgressions. He is the one who paid the price so that their transgressions could be blotted out, so that their sins could be removed as far as the east is from the west. The Messiah is the agent who accomplishes this. But what he demonstrates in doing this at his first appearing is he proves that he is the leader who will perfectly accomplish the will of the Lord. Look what Isaiah says. The will of the Lord will prosper in his hands. And he has proven it through the perfect obedience and submission of his first appearing. Even when he had to endure the rejection and the opposition. Again, all of that rejection and opposition wears out in the end, but he endured it faithfully in his first appearing, just as Israel is going to endure a lot of adversarial opposition and that kind of thing. But here, the Messiah has proved the will of the Lord will prosper under his leadership, and the will of the Lord will prosper in the nation of Israel under his leadership in the Messianic age. That's why this is important, because what he accomplished still has a final fulfillment. What he did was secure his right to accomplish the fulfillment of God's covenant at the end of the age. And that's what's amazing. And so he says, just like Israel, out of Israel's anguish, Israel will be comforted and satisfied. And the Messiah goes through the same thing. Out of the anguish of his soul, the Messiah will see and be satisfied. He too experiences the comfort of the Lord. And I've got a few more things in the notes there for chapter 53. But anyway, that's all I'm going to cover for this video. Let's move on to 54.